How's it going, guys? My name is Andreas. Welcome back to a brand new video on the channel where today we are doing Premier League predictions. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. So, the team I have in last place, in my opinion, it's Bournemouth. Bournemouth for me are that team where they come up and I just don't see any way that they can really stay in the division. They've not done any huge transfers as of late. Their squad overall, in my opinion, is not Premier League really quality either. Sure, they did all right with Scott Parker in the end to get promoted and get back into the Premier League, but for me, I just don't see any way that they are going to survive. So it's a pretty straightforward relegation for me. That's the way I see it. Right, this one could spark a bit of debate in the comments, but this is because of very recent transfer activity that I have them going down in general. And that is Leeds. In my opinion, I was going to have Leeds finishing mid-table and another team, which I'll get onto in a moment, being relegated instead of them, but I think Leeds are actually going to struggle a lot considering they do not have Calvin Phillips anymore, they do not have Rafinha anymore, and on the whole they're not really making, in my opinion, the most shrewd signings to replace them. Obviously with Leeds, they've bought Tyler Adams from Leipzig as a means of replacement, a lad who's done okay in the Bundesliga but nothing too special, and it really does depend on who they try to sign to replace Rafinha as well. They've signed Sinisterra, I believe his name is, from or Siniestra, something like that, from Feyenoord. I believe he got around 20 goals in the Eredivisie last season, but to be honest, so many players get 30 plus goals. It's a league where Luke de Jong got like 30 goals in, and he, we see him now. So in my opinion, it's not really too much to go off. For now, I've got them going down because I just don't see, with two huge key players gone and someone like Jesse March kind of coaching them, I don't see how they're going to stay up really, but I could be wrong. In 18th, and this is another kind of straightforward one for me, I am going with Fulham. I think Fulham, they're the definition of a yo-yo team. They go up, they go down pretty much every time. People always think they're going to do well every time they get promoted because of Mitrovic and how he does well in the Championship, but never really does well in the Prem. In my opinion, I don't see him getting many goals in the Premier League this season, maybe 10 at most. At the end of the day, he's someone who could bang in 50 goals in the Championship, but can only bang in so few in the Premier League. And to be honest, the rest of their signings, I don't really think they've really brought anyone in who looks remotely capable of helping the team stay up. 17th, and this is a bit more of a bold one, but I'm going with Nottingham Forest. Nottingham Forest have done what pretty much any team who gets promoted from the playoffs do. They spend money because that's ultimately what you need to do. And Forest remind me of Villa a lot from the first season when we got promoted. A lot of Forest's key players like Keenan Davis, Jed Spence as well, and a couple others were loans. So they need to try and either try and get them back or find suitable replacements. They're not going to be getting Jed Spence back. He looks like he's going to Spurs, and Keenan Davis, I believe they're negotiating with Villa to try and get a fee, but I don't see that happening. But they've made a few good signings. They've brought in Dean Henderson from United, which he is a good goalkeeper. He's a competent goalkeeper. They've also brought in a lad from Union Berlin, who I believe got about 20 goals in the Bundesliga last season. So for me, that's another impressive piece of business for them. They've got a goal scorer in the club, and on the whole, there's probably a couple which I've missed out on, but I've been quite impressed with some of their transfer business on the whole, and I think they're going to be a club that will struggle to get points at the beginning of the season and may find themselves in the relegation zone, but I think they will fight tooth and nail, and I think they will get out of it on the last few games of the season. 16th, and this is I wouldn't really call this a bold prediction. It's a bit of an unpopular one, what looks like amongst most people, but I've got Southampton to stay up. A lot of people do actually think Southampton are going down for some reason. They've put them in 19th and 18th, and to me, that could very well happen, but I think they're a club who we usually predict to get relegated or struggle really badly, and they always end up staying up. Southampton seems to be the club that, they'll go on a good piece of a run, either at the beginning, the middle, or at the end of the season, and then they'll just bomb for the rest of the year, and that run that happened will keep them up. That seems to be the way they go about things. They've brought in some signings as well. They've splashed the cash a bit on 10 to 12 million valued players. Joe Aribo, I believe, from Rangers being one of them, a player who's been looked at by a few different clubs. They've brought in Gazanu as well, the Manchester City goalkeeper, who does have potential, to be fair. In 15th, and this is where the swapping with Leeds happened, is Brentford. Brentford, for me, are a team that could very well have a second season syndrome, a lot like Sheffield, in my opinion. Because in my opinion, the way I see it is, like Sheffield, Brentford don't have too much squad depth and too much quality that they can call on, that, you know, they can try to really help establish themselves as a consistent Premier League side. And I think because of Leeds' suffering in signings and losing the likes of Calvin Phillips and Rafinha, why I think they'll swap places with Brentford in that sense. Right, in 14th, and this is a more of a swings and roundabouts, I've gone with Everton. Everton, I'm not convinced by Frank Lampard as a manager. I wasn't too convinced when he was at Derby, and I've not been too convinced since. He was okay at Chelsea. He did okay with what he had. But at Everton, obviously, they nearly went down. You know, and they've not made particular signings who you look at and you go, wow, those are really great signings. They've been quite quiet in regards to transfers, I think, so far. They have to try and keep a hold of Anthony Gordon. He's a very good young talent. Lots of clubs are looking at him, though, so that could be difficult. So we don't really know. Everton's one of those that's quite tough to predict at the moment. But I think as it stands, I think 14th is about fair. In, where was it, 13th? In 13th, I have gone for Brighton. I think Brighton, they did well last season. Although, to be fair, they went on a lot of poor runs in time. But then they went on great runs. And then, you know, that kind of carried them to a higher table finish. On the whole, they had a decent season, and I kind of have them expecting to go and finish 13th and finish in that sort of region, thereabouts. They've brought in another striker, but, you know, it's one of those. Graham Potter plays pretty good football with them. You know, everyone expects them to go down or to struggle, but I think around a mid-table finish is going to be all right for them. Above them, I have their rivals in Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace, on the whole, they're all right, you know. The way I see it, I have these bottom 6 teams here all being in major relegation scraps to try and stay up and survive. I think they will all be involved, and I think Everton might get pulled into it, but I think aside from that, everyone else should be pretty fine and pretty safe. Crystal Palace last season, they did pretty well under Patrick Vieira. They got a good mid-table finish about, although I think a lot of people were overrating their season as a whole. A lot of people were gassing Palace up to try and even push for a European place this season. In my opinion, that's not happening for at least another few years before they make signings and, you know, go ahead further. It's vital that they keep Olise. I think he has a release clause in his contract, though, from what I might know. You know, it's important they try and keep Wilfried Zaha, but I think he's pretty much going to stay as well. It's a big L if they do not keep Conor Gallagher. I think Conor Gallagher was a huge element of why they finished so highly last season. So the fact that they're seemingly not going to keep him is a bit of a problem. In 11th, a team, now this is a bit more of a bold one because they finished top half last season and they finished quite strongly. I've gone for Wolves to finish 11th, and here's why. So in my opinion, Wolves, I'm not saying they got lucky to finish as well as they did last season, but overall, they were okay in the Premier League. They weren't a huge team to shout about. They kind of went under the radar, to be fair. But the thing is, I've seen a lot of people on Twitter from their fan bases and stuff, you know, taking aim at the manager a bit, you know, having a bit of problems with some of the things that the club is doing. And in my opinion, that's never good to see before a season starts for a club. It usually does not bode well for when they eventually finish. The main problem for me is they need another striker. Raul Jimenez is nowhere near the level he was before his head injury. And I think if they don't get a consistent goal scorer striker like how Raul Jimenez was before his injury, then I think then this position is in 10th. And this is a bold one, but I am going for Newcastle. I think Newcastle will finish in the top 10 for the next Premier League season. For me, the way they've gone about their transfers now that they have their new owners is very sensible and smart. Bringing in Botman from Ligue 1, a very highly rated defender by many different clubs, it seems. You know, they have Bruno Guimaraes, who will have a full preseason with Newcastle as well. And as well, they're looking at bringing in a lot of different people. Jonathan David, I think they're looking at, and Alexander Isak as well. If they can bring someone of that caliber in, maybe not them, but someone like them, then that definitely bodes well as well. Eddie Howe as well obviously is a very good manager, but I think one unexpected problem which he may have is his transfers. The way I see it is he's not had a huge budget in the previous clubs that he's worked at, i.e. Bournemouth. So I think the fact that he's not used to having such a big budget to spend on different players means that he could potentially get a few signings wrong before he gets more right. But in my opinion, I think before they really push on to those like top 8 positions, which people have them down to finish in, I think they need a few more big statement signings. But that could happen before the transfer window closes. So for now, I've got them in 10th. In 9th, I've gone for my club, Aston Villa. I think this is a fair assessment of where we will finish this upcoming season. We had a disappointing season last season, of course, losing Jack Grealish. You know, that's going to take a toll on anyone considering he was such a good player for the club. But, you know, they've brought in the likes of Diego Carlos from Sevilla, a Champions League or Europa League at the very least quality centre-back. Someone who definitely went under the radar before we actually signed him permanently. So that's a very big signing considering that he will be partnering either Tyrone Mings or Ezri Konsa. So very high quality defender, bringing him in. Good shout. Also a huge signing which has gone under the radar completely, Boubacar Kamara. This was a player at the likes of Juventus, United, and I think PSG were also looking at. 22 years old, he's a French international. It's an absolutely brilliant signing and one we've very much needed, a defensive midfielder as a solid option as well. And as well, of course, we have signed Felipe Coutinho on a permanent deal, someone who started very well when he first came in, you know, had a bit of a overall, dried out a bit before the season ended. But on the whole, he was a very positive loan to have in the club. And as well, when we brought him in, he was trying to gain his fitness back. You know, he hadn't played consistently for a club for a very long time. So now that we have him in and the full preseason, he should be getting back to full fitness. Should be looking good. In 8th, I have gone for West Ham. West Ham, they're a squad that shouldn't really be in the positions they are in regards to their quality. They don't have huge high-level players, like huge names or anything like that. They have Thomas Suchek, yes. They have Declan Rice, of course. But that's pretty much kind of about it. But they just have something about them. They have something about them that does very well. You know, Michail Antonio is a good player. You know, Aaron Cresswell is a competent left back as well. Angelo Ogbonna as well. I believe they still have Issa Diop as well. They have someone who loves to kick cats as well. You know, so on the whole, they're a decent side. On the whole, they're a squad I think that, you know, now they'll look to be finishing around those kind of places. They'll be that consistent top 8 breaker. They won't be finishing top 5 or top 4 or top 6 or something crazy like that they were looking at a couple seasons ago or last season. On the whole, I think an 8th finish for them is about fair. Now we're in the top 7, and the next team I'm going for, it's a bit more of a bold prediction, but I'm going for Leicester. Leicester obviously last season did not have a very good season in comparison to seasons they've had before. On the whole, still not too bad, but I think that will, you know, they've had a summer now to try and iron out a few of those issues. For me, I need to see them sign a few more players to really, you know, boost their quality of squad before I could say for sure that they will finish in that top 8 to top 7 region. I kind of think though that the quality of the players will overall still start to shine. If they keep Yuri Tielemans, then that's going to be a very good move to keep a hold of him. Jamie Vardy as well is obviously a very consistent Premier League goal scorer, and now Patson Daka will start to settle in a bit more as well. James Maddison, hopefully, you know, he had a decent season last season, hopefully he'll do even better. On the whole, they're just a pretty decent quality Premier League side, and I think they'll start to settle in a bit more, and I think a 7th place finish is more about where they will aim. In 6th place, I have gone for, where is it? Tottenham. We have gone for Tottenham to finish 6th. And this might surprise people because of the level of signings they've brought in. But in my opinion, and in my opinion only, the signings have not been that good. And I'm not saying that they're not being what Spurs need, but the names and the level of the players in general have not been too impressive for me. They've signed Yves Bissouma, who, yes, is a very good quality player, and it's also part of an element why I've put Brighton to finish 13th, you know. he is a big part of their midfield. And I think he can do well, yes. But the thing is, I've not been too impressed with everyone else. Richarlison, yes, you know, he's a decent mid-table player for Everton, but 60 million for him, for realistically someone who's going to be kept out of his starting 11 by Kulusevski as well. For me, that doesn't bode too well. You know, they have Son, they have Kane, and they have Kulusevski. They're going to probably have about that front three anyways. So to see, you know, Spurs bringing in someone for 60 million like Richarlison, in my opinion, the money could have been spent better elsewhere. And as well, they're looking to sign Jed Spence as well from Forest for only about 12 million, to be fair. That's actually a good signing if they bring him in. But once again, in my opinion, these three signings are not players that are going to guarantee you a top 4 finish. I think, you know, they need to look higher on the names of the spectrum to bring in those kind of players. But for now, I can't lie. Yeah, they've splashed the cash and stuff, but I've not been too impressed with who they've brought in truth. In 5th, and this one is very difficult for me because it's between two teams as to who gets top 4. But for now, in 5th, I'm going to go for Arsenal. I have a few mates who are Arsenal fans, and yes, I'm sorry for predicting this because I wish I could put you guys 4th. But I have to be realistic, I have to be fair. And in my opinion, Arsenal are just not going to get top 4, I don't think, this season. It's the first time for a couple of years they'll be back in European football, so of course that's going to take a bit of a toll on the squad as a whole. They were, in my opinion, inconsistent last season. They started off very poorly, and then they started going on a good run of form and started to pick things up. And, you know, they got a good set of results, but then they started to still struggle, and they bottled it towards the end to get that top 4 position, in my opinion. The way I see it, I just don't think Arsenal will be consistent enough throughout the whole season to get top 4, because that's truly what you need. You need a level of consistency to get that top 4 that only certain clubs can't get. It's weird that I'm saying that, really, and I'm going to put United in the position above them, and I don't think United will be consistent either, but really, before we get to that, that's just going to be a case of who is actually going to be more consistent. But I'll get on to United in a second. Arsenal have done a lot of good signings. We've had they brought in Gabriel Jesus for 45 million, someone who has done pretty well at Man City, so I think that is a good signing. I think Arsenal will suit him quite well. But, you know, then they brought in that Vieira lad from Porto, but then I think that's kind of about it as well, if I'm not mistaken. You know, the defensive line, you know, Aaron Ramsdale is a pretty decent goalkeeper, but then I think as well, you know, Gabriel, Ben White, you know, these players essentially showed some inconsistency last season, just like the rest of the squad as well. You know, Martinelli started performing better, so if he starts performing well, so that could be, you know, someone who does very well for Arsenal and can be that element. But once again, I just don't think Arsenal are really top 4 quality as of yet. In 4th position, I've gone for Manchester United. In my opinion, the main reason United are finishing in the top 4 is if they keep Cristiano Ronaldo, because that is what decides it for me. If United don't keep him, or at least don't replace him with someone suitable, then they won't get top 4 and Arsenal will. But I think Ronaldo's goals will help United finish in that 4th spot. To be fair, United have made some moves this transfer window. You know, Ten Hag, a manager coming in from Ajax, seemingly seems to be a competent manager. I hope that doesn't come to bite me in the ass. And they've also brought in, you know, Lisandro Martinez from Ajax. That's, here we go, confirmed by Fabrizio Romano himself. They're also looking quite likely to bring in Frankie de Jong at the moment. That's just a case of him not wanting to leave Barcelona. The fee's actually been agreed and everything. So I think eventually, though, that will happen in the future. Who knows? Once again, another deal is if they keep Ronaldo. You know, I think without Ronaldo's goals, United will struggle. In my opinion, the front line as well, in my opinion, doesn't look top 4 too much worthy in that sense. You have Marcus Rashford, someone who's really fallen off a cliff the last year or so. And then, you know, you've got Bruno, someone who was still decent last season, but I don't think at the levels where, you know, they finished second in a few seasons before. And then, you know, they've got a good young talent in Anthony Elanga, you know, and they're looking, I think they have actually confirmed the signing of Christian Eriksen as well. For me, Christian Eriksen is a very weird one, how he's gone straight away from Brentford to United. Right, the top 3 now. 3rd place, I have Chelsea. And in my opinion, this is pretty much dead set. This is I don't see a world where this just does not happen. Chelsea finishing third is pretty much, in my eyes, a guarantee, because the teams who will finish in the top two, aka Liverpool and City, they're pretty much guaranteed to finish there the way I see it, unless if something drastic changes. You know, Chelsea have actually done a good thing by getting rid of Lukaku to Inter Milan, in my opinion. He is a cancer in their squad, and I really don't think he belonged back at Chelsea, really. And they've brought in Raheem Sterling, a player in my eyes who's a very good signing for Chelsea. He's been very consistent and solid at Man City, so I kind of see him performing the same for Chelsea. They're also looking to bring in, who was it? It was Presnel Kimpembe from PSG. They're looking to sign him, and if that happens, that's a very good signing as well. But one who is, here we go, confirmed, is Kalidou Koulibaly from Napoli, someone who has always been linked to the top quality clubs the last few years. Now he's finally gone. He's finally gone to Chelsea, so it's really just a case of seeing how he'll perform. But on the whole, Chelsea have a very solid squad, a very good squad. I think third place is pretty much set for them. Top two, right? Who do I think is basically going to win the league? Right. The team who I think is not going to win the league is... Drumroll. I don't have any drumroll effects, so this is just me saying it. Liverpool. Liverpool, I think, are dead ass set to finish second now, after losing the best football player in the world, Sadio Mane. Honestly, I think Mane leaving Liverpool is actually a big problem for Liverpool, more than the fans will probably realise as well. I don't care if they brought in Darwin Núñez, he's not the same level as Sadio Mane in my opinion. But aside from, you know, Sadio Mane and then Darwin Núñez coming in, they've not really brought anyone to eye-raising yet, unlike City, who we'll get to in a moment. I think City are going to run away with it. On the whole, I think it's going to be quite a runaway league. I feel like City's just going to run off with it quite quick early on, and I think could be even wrapped up by January or February, to be honest. But let me know what you guys think. Take a look at those predictions, take a good look at them. That's what we've got. So we've got, just to sum up, Bournemouth 20th, Leeds 19th, Fulham 18th, Forest 17th, Southampton 16th, Brentford 15th, Everton in 14th, Brighton in 13th, Palace in 12th, Wolves in 11th, Newcastle in 10th, Villa in 9th, West Ham 8th, Leicester 7, Spurs 6, Arsenal 5, United 4, Chelsea 3, Liverpool 2, and Man City 1st.